Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Snuff channel. In this video we're going to look at the SuperCoach stock market after round 20 of the 2023 NRL season, and I guess just after Origin 3. So well done to New South Wales, I suppose, on winning the game. Queensland won the series, so everyone's a winner perhaps. But I guess the good thing in terms of SuperCoach is there doesn't seem to be any major fallout. Maybe Josh had a car with a slight injury. I don't know if he's the most Supercoach relevant player though. So I think we can sort of, you know, be fairly confident in our picks this week. But I guess we will discuss that as we go through. So kicking off with the premium hookers as always. So those 500k and above. At the top of the list this week, we've got Blake Brayley from the Sharks. So a nice return from him with the 86. Season average of 59, which sort of puts him on a par with a couple of the others, Reece Robson, I believe Wade Egan and Reed Marnie aren't too far behind. So a really nice sort of point of difference option through to the end of the season, particularly if you did have him as that coverage in round 19. Cody Nikorima, so has been named at fullback again for the Dolphins. I've got the chop symbol on him here, which might be a bit controversial, but I guess, it's sort of hard to predict where he fits into the side now that, Sean O'Sullivan's back. How long the hammer will be moved to centres, whether that is a permanent move or not. If it is, he might be a nice point of difference, but um, just a bit of uncertainty there. And I think, there's probably a few options above him anyway. So it could be a time to get out of him. Uh, Also, you'll notice his name is highlighted in blue. So I should have mentioned those that are highlighted in blue. Basically, what that means is they still have another bye to get through before the end of the season. Um, so even you'll see so Damien Cook, for example, down the list a bit further, he's highlighted. So even though he has the bye this week and he has the bye symbol, he also has another bye around 26, I think, is South's other bye. So that's just, I guess, a bit of extra to help you decide if it's between two similar players and, one still has a bye to get through, the other one doesn't. Well, it stands to reason the other player might get those extra points across the rest of the season. Reece Robson, so another player that does have a bye coming up, but didn't play massive minutes in Origin, so you'd expect him to back up. Another point of difference type of option there. Harry Grant, so he's a gun, and you can see his average of 69 is clearly the top average at the moment. So in the position, so I think if you don't get him, you have to get him in. Obviously, with a break even of 95, you could wait, but I wouldn't wait too long because points probably count for more this season than this point of the season, I should say, than the money you make out of it. Damien Cook, as I talked about previously, is on the bye this week and also has another bye coming up. So just factor that in if you are looking to trade him in. Is that, we obviously don't trade him in this week, but if you look to trade him in next week, just keep in mind that he's not going to get those extra points. So you may want to look at someone like a Brayley, averaging 59 across two extra games will sort of cover Cookie's average there. Marshall King, so this niggling shoulder injury, I think because of the unknown sort of timelines, you can absolutely cut him. And Abby Coruscant, he's back this week, which is great to see for the Tigers. So I'd just wait. He's got a massive break even, so could be a really juicy pickup in a couple of weeks once that injury score rolls out of his average. Onto the cheapies, so I guess another Dolphins player here. We've talked about JMK and Cody already, but Harrison Graham from the Dolphins, named to start at hooker this week. 62 points last week gives us a bit of an indication around what we can perhaps expect. So, if you are looking for a cheap option, bottom dollar, he might be the best of the bunch this week just because the medium-term job security seems okay. Whether he plays through the end of the season is questionable. But yeah, if that's the way you want to go, I wouldn't begrudge you there. Reed Marnie, so just squeezed into this list there, as you can see, 499 6k, 499.6k, I should say. So 85 on the weekend, obviously a beneficiary of the Bulldogs' more attacking performance, and whether that can maintain. But I guess there's been that false dawn already with the round two game against the Storm. Still a great point of difference option. Definitely one I'm keeping it through to the end of the season. Um, and yeah, it just depends on how well the Bulldogs fire now that they've rejigged their back line a bit. Ray Stone, so playing lock 13 for the Dolphins. So, nice dual position as well. So, you add that up, it could be a little point of difference option there. But, yeah, again, it just depends on whether he can maintain that lock position. Sam Verrill, so scored 62 on the weekend. Obviously, the Titans are done with their buys, which is nice. But I am concerned about Chad Randall on the bench. So, it seems like pretty much a 40-40 split. Neither of those guys are particularly, lock forward types. You could argue maybe Randall with his defensive capabilities. But I think, they're just going to end up cannibalising each other's scores. So I'm suggesting pass. But with an average of 50, he's not too far away from the calculations. Excuse me, and definitely has the pedigree to score well. The next couple, Jake Granville, Brendan Hand. Well, I guess they are different. Jake Granville, if you've still got him for whatever reason, he's done his job for us a while ago. So it's more of a public service announcement to cut him. I mean, if you need to, you go down to Graham. I think that's an absolute no-brainer. If you can afford to go up, that's probably even better. Brendan Hands, he's got the 80-minute role there at Para without any sort of mention of Josh Hodgson still. So, but the average sort of speaks for itself. He's had a few games now of 80 minutes and he's still averaging 32 for the season. 3-round average of 43 also. Wade Egan, so 74 on the weekend and averaging 59 for the season. So again, around that pod sort of average. Frankie Lussick is named on the bench this week though, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. They have in the past done the switcheroo, and Egan's come off the bench. But either way, Egan could play a bit of lock forward, but they really have Dylan Walker there for that purpose. So, and the Warriors have all those big minute middle forwards anyway. So probably, I guess, out of the pods, probably the one I'd shy away from the most. I guess if to put him in some sort of order, I'd probably go Marnie first. Again, maybe a bit of Bulldog bias there. Blake Brayley second, Wade Egan, Reece Robson, and then Wade Egan. Jake Simpkin, he's sharing duties with De Silva, the young hooker there, and Appy's back now anyway. So cut him. Tanner Boyd, playing halfback means he's up for potentially some different points, but I think there's better options. And Jake Turpin, now that Brandon Smith's back in the lineup, I think he's worth a chop as well. On to the front rowers, 600k and above. So Joey Tarpany at the top of the list after a 94 on the weekend. Massive effort from him, obviously on the bye this week. So if you wanted to move him on to, I guess the only one really is if you can afford to go up to Tino this week. That's probably not the worst move. You may want to just see how he backs up from Origin though. Tino, that is. So Harris 94 as well, so nice bit of symmetry there. Really great sort of point of difference option, a bit cheaper than Tarpany too, so there could be a trade there. But I think, it's like for like, it's pretty sideways. The Warriors do have a bye coming up also. Corey Horsburgh, so obviously got a game for Queensland last night. Should back up. I don't think he played a lot of minutes. He come on there in the second half, so definitely more of a point of difference pick amongst these premium options, but I guess if you're that way inclined and you are low on trades, you could easily hold. Payne Haas, just wait a week. He's only out for a week, it would seem. And he's one of those blokes who sort of doesn't stay out longer than he needs to with injury. So yeah, I think hold. Don't rush to sell him. Tino is obviously a gun. If you can afford to get him in, absolutely do it. And Fanua Blake, so obviously his season average is still there, but he is dipping in price from where he was at his peak. The Warriors have the bye coming up, so you may want to make a move there. I guess we've got the budget front rowers because there's not a lot of cheapy options if we're being honest. So Mitch Barnett is at the top of the list this week. So 126 on the weekend, which is massive. He does have history when it comes to Supercoach scoring, and at just over 500k could be an absolute bargain. So I've got the Super Pod there on him. I guess it all comes down to his ability to hold his place in that Warriors middle rotation. Once you're in there, you usually get a lot of minutes, but you've got to get in there, I suppose. Asafa Solomona, so named out on the edge. So for that reason too, you've got to give him the super pot, I think, just because the potential for him to play big minutes and obviously create some more attacking stats as the world's biggest second rower. Is definitely intriguing. Probably don't have the trades or the cojones to go there, but I could see a few people doing it and being duly rewarded. Palacia, so named to start this week in the front row. That's an absolute trap. He's just warming the spot for Payne Haas. So don't get sucked into that. Max King, I guess when we talk about the Bulldogs front row is the fact that they're looking that more loose or floating style suits those guys well. Again, it all depends on how well it stands up in the coming weeks. So, at his price, he provides a bit of DPP cover, which is handy, but not the number one priority, I think. A few of the guys like Sean Keppie, Lindsay Smith, you've held them through Origin to cover. Time to give them the chop. Harry Edwards looks like he's out of the 17 now for the Dogs, so you can get rid of him. Jack DeBellin is on the bye this week. Hame Sele's on the bye, but he's probably one we can get out of, possibly. He's done his job for us. Paseka, same sort of deal. DPJ, I guess he looked good on the weekend, but again, do you want to roll the dice? I mean, him and Max King are the same price. If I had to pick one, I'd go for the upside of DPJ, but you can have another look with his break even. And Ruben Cotter, man of the series and well deserved there in Origin. But he's got a bit of a high break even, so you can wait a week or two, wait till he gets those bigger minutes back in the middle there for the Cowboys and get on then, I think, if you want him for the run home. So onto the premium second row forwards, the ones 600k and above, and at the top of the list we've got Jeremiah Nanai. So obviously coming off Origin, and I guess the Cowboys bye as well. The 3-round average there of 91 sort of goes to exemplify why he is such a potential pod for the back end of the season. So I know he was one I was keen on starting with at the start of the season, but got off very quickly because of his low floor and low sort of work rate. However, his ability to score tries is what made him so interesting. And at the back end of the season, he's the sort of pick that can make a bit of difference because obviously there's not as wide of a scope across the season to sort of have those variable scores. So, definitely an upside pick like that is a good way to finish your team. There is others that you can go with, and we'll try to highlight a few of them throughout. But I guess for that reason, I've got him as a serious pod option. Not quite super pod. I couldn't quite bring myself to that, but definitely one to keep an eye on going forward. Nat Butcher, so I guess I've got him as a pod as well, and he sort of typifies the other end of the scale. A real workhorse, gets through a mountain of work, and might not necessarily have that attacking upside, but there is definitely potential there with him. So, I guess if you're looking for a more secure pod, Nat Butcher is a really good shout. If you like the risk of that higher ceiling, then, maybe Nanai is the way to go at that price point. In saying that, though, I think Nakora is one that you could have above those guys. Obviously, 88 last week was nice. Season average of 75 is even better. He is a gun. Definitely, someone I'd recommend having for the rest of the season. David Fafita, absolute tank. I was a bit concerned when he went off early in Origin last night, but it looks like a tactical sort of manoeuvre. They got Ruben Cotter out on the edge, maybe just giving him a spell from the middle. Just want him out there for the 80 minutes. But also scored a try. I was a bit filthy because I had him for a first try scorer in Origin 2, and then I didn't go again this one. And lo and behold, first try scorer. So, absolute tank. Love for Feeder. Don't get him, find a way to get him in. If you don't have him, find a way to get him in. Jermaine Hopgood, so 64 on the weekend, a bit below his season average, but easy gun. Will be better, I think, for the experience of being in the Origin camp. So it could be one to really sort of ride home the back end of the season. Pat Carrigan, so again, another one. He didn't play as many minutes as you would have thought in Origin, so I think he'll back up this week. Again, a bit more of a Nat Butcher type pod. With probably less attacking potential. So, if you just want a solid 60 points every week, have Carrigan, but I think, there'll be others that go off around him. Scott Sorensen, his price has gone backwards since obviously the monster game a few weeks ago now. But if you've still got him, I think it's time to get out of him. The 3-round average of 55 is probably more reflective of what we can expect going forward. Isaiah Yeo, so I guess also didn't play a full 80 minutes in Origin, which is rare for him, so he'll back up. He's a gun. I mean, with a break even of 101, you could wait if you haven't got him to bring him in, but again, there's no bad times to trade in a gun. Onto the mid-range options, and so for this one, there's quite a few options in the 5 to 600k range. So I've got Sean Bloor at the top of the list, but has been named on the bench with Bateman moving back onto the edge. So I think I've got him as a bit of a trap. Would have been nice to have him over the past few weeks with that 3-rounder of 74, but I think the fun times have ended there. Jackson Ford, so 77 last week, which is great. He's still got a positive break even in the sense of his average, but I think it is time to give him the chop. He's sort of is again the definition of that player that'll score you a solid 55. Might get over for the occasional try, but also has a bye coming up, that sort of deal. So I think there's more potential sort of upside options moving forward. One of those being Olaquatu from Manly. So again, doesn't have the strongest work rate, but can find the line and other attacking stats. So, a nice point of difference. I mean, it's only 40 grand to go from Ford to him. So I think that's entirely possible for a lot of people. Bryce Cartwright, the Cardi party, I think, is about to wind up. 42 on the weekend. So his break-even's now slightly above his season average. I know Sean Lane is back and he's still named to start, but for me, I think he's done his job of sort of, a nice number during the buys, but we can go for a pick that has a bit more upside. Josh King, again, sort of in the Jackson Ford category of solid workhorse. But other than that one big week where he turned up, I don't think he's had too many big games. So, I'd rather upside, and therefore I'd consider cutting Josh King. Teague Wilton, so 59 on the weekend's a solid return. We know he has attacking upside, as do a lot of the Sharks players. So, nice point of difference. Probably not my number one pick, but if you've got him, you're low on trades, I don't think you need to sell. Ryan Madison, so, we know what he's capable of scoring. 54 on the weekend is a bit below par for him, but, really nice point of difference for the back end of the season. Even if he is named to come off the bench, he'll play those 50 minutes and just get through a ton of work and find SuperCoach points. Sean Lane, so still on the sort of decline in terms of his cash, given that he's now back for the Eels. So, um, maybe a real sort of point of difference, but not one I'd go near. Jacob Preston, so, this one really hurts to say because he's done such a good job for us, but I think, it's time to cut him. His season average of 60, and it's not to say that he won't continue averaging that for the year. We know he can find a try, but I guess, yeah, there is those sort of slightly higher averaging players that I think we can go with. So if you can hold him, I'd recommend it. But I know for myself, he's one I'm selling just to try and make some cash this week, as much as it pains me to say. Because, yeah, I do love him as a player, and obviously he's a Bulldogs fan. But in SuperCoach, it's all about the points, the money, all that. So a reluctant chop, but a chop nevertheless. Glow Matangi, so, this dictionary definition of these guys who have upside potential that we want to target for the last few rounds of the season. I forgot to mention he's on the buy this week, and then obviously has another buy as well. But I have put the super pod on him in the past. I think I had to take that off because he is fairly well owned now. But yeah, definitely one to consider for the run home. John Bateman, so back on the edge, which might actually limit his scoring a bit, but given his versatility and also just his will to win, is enough to consider him as a point of difference. Whereas Isaiah Papali'i, also from the Tigers, also playing on the edge, just, he hasn't relived his glory from the Eels last year or last couple of years. So I think, if you've got him, you can do better. On to the cheapies, and again, there's not a great deal of options here. Cleese Haas is at the top of the list, so named to start this week as well. You could do a 1 week cash grab, but it looks like Joe Stimson will be back next week after concussion, and then Haas will revert to the bench, and then he might even go back in cash before the end of the year. Could be an auto emergency nightmare. So yeah, if you're desperate for cash, he's the trade-in option in the second row, unless you want to go with an absolute nuff, which is probably the preferred method of cash generation in the forwards. But that's the best of a quite small bunch. Lachlan Fitzgibbon, so I guess his cash has dipped quite a lot. I can remember him being in the premium options earlier in the year, and with one of the top averages. So, averaging 60 for the season at less than 500k in a Knights team that seems to have sort of turned their fortunes around a bit with the Kalen Ponga back to fullback move and the like. So it could be a real nice pod for the back end of the season. Cam Murray, so now that Origin's out of the way, he could be a nice point of difference. Obviously, the thing going against him is that he still has to get through 2 buys, including the one this week. So I guess, if you are looking for a cheap second rower, you could go with him. Probably my preferred option, though, is Liam Martin at this price point. So you can see he's still under 500k, only just, but still has a nice break even, and he's always in amongst it, so he can find a try. Work rate's always good. So yeah, it could be another pod for the back end of the season. And Curtis Moran, so someone we have hyped up as a cheap option a few weeks ago, but has now reverted to sort of being the last middle forward option off the bench for the Dogs. So if you've got him, I think you have to chop him. Yeah, because he will become an auto emergency nightmare. Onto the halfbacks, and at the top of the list, Toby Sexton. So has moved to the Dogs, played his second game, played one game for the Titans and turned up. So that's why he has an average of 83. Um, Not one I'd consider, but he is on the bubble this week. So, um, I think we've sort of got the three or four main options around halfback. Jack Cogger, he's done his job, but Cleary's either back this week or next week. So, if you can afford to wait and see, you might get one more cash rise out of him. But I think, it's time for him to make way. Nico Hines, so you'll notice he's now got the tank icon as well. Season average of 102, so, it only seemed fitting that he earns it. He's not just a gun, he is an absolute tank in SuperCoach. Adam Reynolds, I got the trap symbol on him. So basically, I guess if you look at the options that I have got as guns or pods in this list, they all have one thing in common, or a couple of things in common. Obviously, they play halfback for their team, but also they're all goal kickers. So, yeah, the exception to that rule is Adam Reynolds. Right? He's always been the trap as far as I'm concerned, as a goal kicking halfback, but just doesn't probably run the ball enough, and make those sort of plays that he can be considered as a viable option at halfback. Excuse me. Mitchell Moses, so obviously backing up from Origin, will be buoyed by the win. Average of 75, so you've got to put some respect on that. He is a point of difference for the back end of the season, but I guess given he still has a bye, and it is the last round of the year too, so I mean there is an argument to hold him right up until round 27, save a trade and flip, but I'd probably have him fourth on the list anyway, so not a move for me. DCE doesn't kick goals, so I'm passing. Jerome Hughes doesn't kick goals, so I'm passing. Nathan Cleary, so he's in the extended bench this week. He was due back from injury this week, so and they play late in the round, so you'd expect he gets up, but until you can confirm for sure, it might be just a wait and see. And even if you miss the deadline because you've got a busy life or whatever, with a break even of 131, he's not getting too far away. Even if he goes bananas, you do miss out on the points, but you can still afford to get him at a similar price next week. Sean Johnson, so I guess out of the pod options besides Hines and Cleary is the set and forget. I do rate him as the higher option to Moses just because the Warriors run is really nice to the back end of the season. The one thing against him is he does have the bye next week. So, I guess depending on how his wife goes with the baby, he might miss this week too. So, it's one where I know initially I was thinking SJ to Cleary, simple move. Now I'm sort of sitting on whether I wait and save a trade and wait till Sunday, or if I run with it for this week and do a trade elsewhere that I want to do. So that's I guess what I'm wrestling with at the moment in that position. Onto the 5/8s, and we've got quite a few here, so we have split them up into premium and cheapies. Top of the premium 5/8 list this week is Tommy Dearden. So I guess like a few of the other Cowboys backline players, a ridiculous 3-round average of 131. So he's at 770k and still got a negative break even. I mean, if you've got the money to splash and you want a real point of difference, you can't argue with the 3-round average, but I think there's better value at the position. So for that reason, I'm not going there, but I can understand people who might want to get on. Dejan Arce from the Eels, he's ticking along well with an average of 67 for the season. At 500k, that's pretty good value. I just feel like the ship's sailed on this pick because he's not going to make a lot more money. And Dylan Brown looks like he'll be back around round 23, I think it is. His suspension will finish. So at that point, you'd expect him to drop out, and it's going to cost you another trade anyway. Kalen Ponga, so 3 round average of 107. So ever since he's moved back to fullback, the SuperCoach points have been flowing thick and fast. And so for that reason, I think he's a really great pod. And probably, besides Cody and Munster, he's probably the next on the list in terms of 5'8s. Jerome Luai, just looking at the average sort of suggests that maybe he's not in the conversation for our finished teams. And so for that reason, it's a pass for me. Joey Manu, so, it's 3 round average of 100. He's doing well. But now that he is back playing in the centres, you worry that they're going to start to get a bit more inconsistent scoring. So I definitely wouldn't have him in one of my 5'8 slots. Might consider him as a centre winger still because he's always been elite in that company. And the dual position, I don't know if there's a lot of real sort of enough centre wing 5'8 options that you could swing in with anyway. So any sort of swing would probably involve him and Ponga and then a centre wing fullback option. So, he's one I'm definitely considering letting go of to generate money for other positions. But in saying that, with a break even of 55, it doesn't have to be done this week. Cam Munster, so I guess probably didn't get a lot of opportunity last night, but he's a gun. He'll back up. He'll average 70 and the rest for the rest of the season. So at his price, he's probably the number one trading target in the 5'8 position this week. Matt Burton. So I guess with Toby Sexton coming to the club, the concern was maybe he won't be on the ball as much, which will affect his scoring. He was scoring really well at halfback. If anything, it looks like Sexton's freeing him up, so just giving him more space and just as much ball. So if that trend continues, again, a really great point of difference for the rest of the season. And Cody Walker, made the difference, I think, last night for New South Wales. Just his threat on the edge and ability to put those players in space outside of him. I guess the downside, as we keep talking about with the South players, is they do have this week bye and round 26 bye. So, if you think he can outscore the other guys in the sort of 6 weeks that he is available, as opposed to some like Ponga or Munster are available for 8 weeks, then, be my guest. Onto the cheap options and a couple of interesting ones to consider here, I think. Amone from the Dragons is at the top of the list this week after he's at 111, which, sees his price sort of bottom out at 292. Negative break even. Does have the bye this week, so it's one you can sit on for a week. But you might be missing out on some scoring opportunities if you're waiting to bring him in. Tristan Salas on the bubble this week, but Reece Walsh should be back next week, which means you only get one price rise out of him and one more score, so probably not a trade in. Sandon Smith, I think even though he's got a negative break even, I feel like maybe the ship sailed on this pick. He was bottom dollar, so you're probably not getting the full value you could get out of him. Although the 3 round average of 62 suggests that maybe I'm wrong. Definitely not one I'd recommend trading in though at this point. Phoenix Crossland, so again, nice 3 round average. He's really settled into that hooker role. Nice break even, but I think, there's probably juicier options that have a bit more upside. So for that reason, I'd give him a miss. Luke Metcalf, so, he was all the hype in pre-season and he's showing why. 112 on the weekend, season average of 61, 3 round average of 69. But again, similar to the Sandon Smith story, I think the ship's sailed. He's not going to make too much more in terms of coin. Has a buy as well, which sort of complicates things. And yeah, I'd rather pay up that bit extra for Munster, rather than sort of play the game. In saying that, if you do need to trade one in, I'd probably go with Sandon Smith just because his price is lower and can make a bit more money, and doesn't have a buy. But at this point, I really think you want to target 2 gun 5/8 for the run home, or two, higher averaging 5/8. Onto the centre wing options, and at the top of the premium list this week is Sifa Talakai. So 103 last week. So for those that were gambling on a Sharks backline player to do well and score big points for them in the round 19, I think Talakai won that one, although Ramian and Katoa weren't too far off. In fact, I probably got that wrong. I think Katoa actually got the highest. But yeah, he's got the SuperCoach pedigree, season average of 65, so a really nice pod for the run home. Isaac Targo, another one in that sort of similar category as a centre winger that has been known to play second row in the past. Season average of above 75, that's, pod tick. Campbell Graham, I guess his downside, as we keep saying, 2 buys the rest of this season, but a season average of 76, he's well and truly in the mix. Phil Sammy, so 81 on the weekend, which gives him a 3-round average of 73. Maybe a bit more of an exotic pod if you like the Titans run home. I haven't studied it too closely, but I guess if you are targeting the Titans backline, he's the obvious choice. Greg Marzu, so he's a gun. 78 season average is probably all we need to say about that. He should be fine for the run home. Bailey Simonson, so I guess 3-round average of 82 suggests there might be a bit of something there. But I think, again, like a lot of the Parramatta players, he's done his job in the sense of getting us through the tricky buy rounds. So now's the time you take that money and run. Val Holmes, so a 3-round average of 119. Sort of, missed that. It's elevated his season average to 75, so he's earned the gun status. But at his price, he's probably, gone for those who would like to bring him in, which is a shame because, 75 average gun. Dane Gagai, so still sort of punching out a nice season average of 67. Point of difference, but probably not my first pick. Brian Toto, I guess I've had to put the pod symbol on him just because his average is a bit down. But, you saw the try in Origin last night. He can score a try. He's probably relying on actually getting fed the ball out on that right edge. Ruben Garrick, goal kicking fullback, that's always a big tick in our books. So even though his break even is 97, I would not begrudge anyone trading him in this week. Jermaine Osako, season average of 76 suggests he's a gun. But with that 3-digit break even and they're playing against Penrith this week, you can wait if you haven't got him. He will dip in price and be a very juicy pickup in a couple of weeks' time after their bye. CNK and DWZ, so, peaked in price. So I've got CNK as the pod there just because I've got that little man crush on him. DWZ, I've got the chop symbol on, but, you could hold DWZ and sell CNK, vice versa. Chop both, keep both. They're both nice point of difference options, but again, you can use that money elsewhere. Onto the mid-range options, and at the top of the list is Ravalawa from the Dragons, obviously on the bye this week. I guess Matt Timoko as well. They've got pretty similar profiles there, tonned up on the weekend. Bye this week, season average about 60. If you've got them, you obviously hold them for a while. But, I wouldn't recommend rushing to get either of them in, even after their buys this week. Semi Velame, so the roller coaster, the average of 76 is deceiving. He's played 4 games, got 2 scores of 110 plus, but then 2 scores of 40. So that's how he's ended up on that average. I wouldn't recommend trading him in. He's not going to make that much more money. And, you could probably go elsewhere and get a more consistent score. Valence Tafare, so I had the ship sail on this pick, and then I hadn't realised that he wasn't even named in the 17 this week. So it's a tricky one. You could get 200k by chopping him. Yeah, in saying that, he's probably only one injury away from working his way back into the team. Again, I'm not 100% sure on the mix of Cody Nikorima at fullback and the Hammer in the centres. So, it's sort of do what you want to do with him. Lemuelu, so 72 last week with a try. He's named in the edge again this week, which is where we want him. We want him playing on the edge, big minutes as that dual position option. Jacob Kiraz, again, the Bulldogs back in form means he's back running and offloading and getting amongst it. So at that price, he is a really nice point of difference for the back end of the season. The Hammer, so another one that I'm sort of begrudgingly cutting in the Jacob Preston sort of mould. Uh, I think it's just his attack at the Dolphins, if he's playing in the centre, is limited to how much ball he can get out there. Obviously, in Origin, there's a bit of opportunity to get fed by some pretty quality players. And no disrespect to the Dolphins halves and the like, but I guess it is a bit trickier in the NRL to get that quality ball as a centre. I think Joey Manu, for example. So for that reason, I'm suggesting maybe we cut him. You make 150k going down to Jacob Kiraz, who's also playing in the centres and has that same sort of potential for upside. Will Penasini, another Eels player who's done the job for us, so don't mind the 25 last week. Just say thank you and get him out of your team. Alex Johnston, so 21 on the weekend. He was the only winger that didn't score a try, as Vossi kept alluding to in the commentary. High break even, 2 buys left. I know there's some fans of AJ out there, and I've been potentially proven wrong before, but I think you've got to get out of the pick. There's better picks that'll score way more than him over the course of the next 8 weeks. Ronaldo, so for those who gambled on Mulatalo to be the try scoring points racker-upper from the Sharks, unlucky. He was one I was tossing up in the Bulldogs project side, and gladly or gratefully, I suppose, I ended up going with Will Kennedy over him. So that got me an extra 50 or so points for that team. But yeah, it's time to chop Ronaldo. He's done his job for us. Again, thanks for the service. Jack Bird on the bye this week, but that nice dual position swing with second row, if that's what you need in your team. If you're looking to bring one in the near future, obviously Lemuelu is much cheaper. Will Warbrick, another one who's done his job for us. He's kicked hard with some more cash gen. That's now almost 400k for the year. So well done to those who held, but you can salute him and use that money elsewhere. Nick Meaney, so I guess if you could do Warbrick to Nick Meaney, same sort of profile in terms of the team, but as a goal kicking fullback, that is really good value and a really nice point of difference. Onto the cheapy options, and the top of the list this week, Tyrone, I think it is, Munro. I've just completely blanked on his first name. The South's young winger, I think he played centres in the first game, but 91 on the weekend, 2 tries, absolute speed freak, looks really exciting. So I think he'll be the number one traded in player next week, even though a lot of people got on him early last week. I was one of those and was absolutely cheering that I did. People might even bring him in this week as that bottom dollar cheapy option. I can totally understand that. Blake Wilson, so this was a bit of a surprise, getting 109. I had brought him in just hoping he would cover Addo Carr for the 2 bye games. Got a third game in the middle there somewhere as well, and now has been named on the wing. Jacob Kiraz has been pushed into the centres to accommodate him. So he's done a job there. So looks like he's going to be a nice little cash cow for the end of the season. Probably just run out of time and trades to bring him in. Next on the list, I've got Jake Averillo. So a bit of a contentious best buy this week. I was really struggling to nominate one. But I guess with him named to move the fullback last week, you knew that he was going to potentially get something like an 85. It's definitely, I think, his position. I don't know why it took Seraldo so long to realise that Hayes Perrin probably isn't an NRL fullback and Jake Averillo is. And in that time, he's now found himself going to the Dolphins. So the Dolphins have got an absolute jet for next year. But with that move, he's priced under 400k as someone that you could potentially play every week. Playing fullback in what looks like hopefully a sort of reinvigorated attack there at the Dogs with Toby Sexton coming into the fold also. And so for that reason, I think if you're targeting one player, he would be my guy. But again, there's no obvious standouts. If it wasn't for South on the bye, that best buy signal would be about 2 places up on the list. Tommy Talau, so 58 on the weekend. So hey, I guess a bit of a roller coaster of season he's had. He's scored well, and then he's been pushed back to the bench, and then he's dropped to reserve grade. Then he's come back, and he's done okay. Then he's done terrible. So probably an avoid. The only advantage he's got is that there's no more buys for the Tigers. With Happy Coruscant back, it stands to reason the attack will improve. But I don't like it. Rocco Berry, he sort of was covering that last buy round for us, but if you wanted to downgrade to Munro and bank the 100k, that's fine. If you can go up, that's even better. If you wanted to, even just that 70k up to Averillo, really good move. Billy Smith, again, another one. He's okay, but he's just not averaging enough, so we'll chop him. Richie Kenner, again, he's made a bit of cash on the bye this week, but probably shouldn't be in your team too much longer. And on to the fullbacks to finish up. So Blake Taff at the top of the list, 102 on the weekend. He almost got him over the line there against the Dogs. On the bye this week, and then you'd expect Latrell comes back. So not a trade in. If you've got him, it's probably time to cut him. Unless you're banking on Latrell getting another little injury or something, which you don't really want to do. Scott Drinkwater, so a 3-round average of 136, costing almost $1 million and not very well owned. So he is a super pod if you can afford him. But I think for most mere mortals, he's well out of price range. Clint Gutherson, so very similar, I guess, in terms of the 3-round average. 900k isn't quite as steep. So, he's a bit of a super pod too. I think he's more well owned because of the Origin coverage before he got picked for Origin. But I think people who have him have just had to hold him now. The only thing you'll have to be prepared for is to keep a trade up the sleeve for round 27. Will Kennedy, so, he did the job for us. I don't know why I've put DNP. He did play last week. I've completely balls that up. But, like I said before, he's the one I brought into the Bulldogs project team. But I think, he's done his job. If we can move him on to someone like a James Tedesco, perhaps, then that would be a suitable play. Reece Walsh, so suspended for 1 more week. So if you've got him, just probably hold him. Could be a nice point of difference for the run home. Dylan Edwards, it's a bit tough to say someone with the 70 average for the season is a pass, but I think that just goes to show how high scoring the fullback position can be. He's certainly capable of it. It might be a nice point of difference, but I guess comparing the scores, it's not quite where we want it. In saying that, then I've got a player averaging about 10 points less over the season as a pod, but we all know Teddy's pedigree. 104, so you can sit and wait this week and see how he goes. But, he's definitely one I'm considering bringing in to finish the team, just based off, what we know he can do. And the fact the Roosters are just outside the 8, So he will be busting the gut to make sure they get to the finals. Dream Buller, so 40 on the weekend. He's starting to dip in price. I did put the chops in on him originally, and he was always in my plans to sort of trade out. But with Appy coming back this week, it could reignite the Tigers, and as a result, Buller could kick in price again. So, again, it's one you can wait and see. But with that high break, even if you did want to bank the cash, I can totally respect that. Latrell, he's on the bye this week, but he's back next week. Um, so yeah, I think if you're going to, if you've got the trades, you can do a couple of trades this week to bring someone in, and then obviously 1 week and trade out to Latrell. I'm going to try and hold off and bring him in next week though. I think because goal kicking fullback, we absolutely love it. So I guess to summarise in terms of buying, keeping, selling, avoiding. On the buy list, like I said, I really struggled with best buys this week. So as a general thing, I'm just saying buy guns. This is the time of the year where we want to get our teams fleshed out for the run home. So just bring in the big hitters, as many as you can. If you are looking for a cheaper option though, as I said, I like Jake Averillo playing fullback for the Dogs. Probably his preferred position. And with Toby Sexton in the team, I'm hoping, or not expecting, but definitely hoping that those sort of attacking stats can keep coming for the Dogs back line. On the keep list, obviously keep Payne Haas. He should be back next week. And Walker, how am I talking about Walker? I can't even think now. What have I done there? I've just had a complete blank. I did prepare all these slides yesterday in preparation for this before Origin, but that has completely. Maybe I was saying Reece Walsh and I've put Walker in there. I don't know what I was thinking, Dylan Walker. But yeah, maybe Reece Walsh. If you've held him, you hang on because he's back next week. On the sell list, as I said, a couple of reluctant sells there. Jacob Preston, Dream Buller, they could still come good. But, if we've got to pick someone to go to upgrade the guns, these guys are maybe just that tier below. And again, on the avoids, I think they're fairly obvious, but the guys like Sean Bloor, who are coming off the bench and obviously don't score as well off the bench, guys like Valamay, where it's very variable in their scoring. In saying that, I have backed in guys like Jeremiah Nanaway and the like that do have that variable scoring, but I guess, they have a history of it, which is why we want to lean towards them. And so that wraps it up for the stock market this week. As always, if you've got any comments, please feel free to add them in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe to the channel. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.